trick. Spring is here. Time to unleash nature's fury as well as her gift of life and growth with those who skillfully wield it. Electrokinetics.
What could be grease lightning?
These guys manipulate, control, and conjure electricity. Both thunder and lightning work hand in hand. And the very agile and versatile harnessers could even make Benjamin Franklin blush. Sure, he was the historical pioneer of utilizing electric means, but these 10 shocking contenders take it leaps and bounds above him. Whether it be conducting, being shock resistant, or bending volatile energy for either life or death, this should mean a lot considering I happen to be an astrophobic. Buckle down, take cover, and beg for mercy for these intimidating elementals. They're even making my hair stick up. Don't let them strike twice now.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
Before we start this list, I just need to ask one thing. Does anyone recall the Capcom classic 1942? The NES game based on World War II, in which you control a small plane against enemy fleets? Well, let me ask you that. Did you know that it can fire not just the usual projectiles, but actually lightning? Well, it does. And it takes out waves of enemies. I mean, it was a Capcom game after all, as they needed to come up with something fishy. The plane itself is actually named on an actual aircraft, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, aka the Super Ace, and the NES game is based on the destination before the Battle of Midway. And it is the first of its kind, before 1942 Battle of Midway. With such a versatile force, there is a catch. It can always be decimated by enemy fire or crashes in one hit, as weak as those space vessels in Gradius. I discovered this game by pure chance back then via emulator. Over 20 years ago when I was still in high school. Maybe it was out of curiosity after learning some US history and its involvement with Japan. I'm not sure. And while it's as fragile as a paper cup, no one has ever brought it up. Still using the power of lightning bolts to smite Imperial Japanese forces? It's nothing short of awesome.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
Outlaw and Outlaw 2 combined from Twisted Metal was just another random mediocre choice for this list. Both vehicles are police cars, and they each wield an omnidirectional ability known simply as the Taser. Just like any other, it does emit lethal electricity, except this one produces a radius of radical energy that covers certain ground and stun and lift enemies caught in it. Just like Twister in my Aerokinetics list, it is limited and could be easily avoided. The first Outlaw Cruiser debuted in the OG game driven by Sergeant Carl Roberts, aka Buzz Roberts, and in World Tour it was driven by his sister, Captain Jamie Roberts. They both want to enter these death matches to restore order onto the world and rid the chaos like any noble officer. Each vehicle possesses the Taser, which could be a decent weapon, but it's only used for short range, leaving them vulnerable to enemies further away, as well as projectiles. It's mostly used for drive-bys, honing onto nearby enemies who dare to cross their warpath. However, just like the Lightning Plane and Twister, they're incredibly weak, though speedy. I wasn't too thrilled with neither police car, but it was just something to encounter. And it can make a formidable enemy and a promising choice if mastered. And the omnidirectional taser reminds me of Shell and Monks' new multiple fighter engine, which I wish they'd use more often. Overall, they seem to be an endurable link for this list, but they're a tad interesting. And I kind of wish Stryker would use it if he was in both tournaments.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
Of course, another one of Kirby's elemental transformations, Spark Kirby, makes it on here. Just like my entries on previous lists, this debuted in Kirby's Adventure, in which he surrounds himself with electricity capable of decimating enemies and obstacles. Just like Outlaw and Tornado Kirby, it's omnidirectional, but unfortunately it immobilizes him as he can't move during execution. That is until Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, where he moves slowly when using the Spark ability, even in conjunction with other abilities such as Water, Fire, and Stone. It was actually done better, especially combined with opposing elements, much like another contender for later. In Kirby's Return to Dreamland, it can be charged up and he can shoot out light arrows, although he still needs to be still, even when firing upwards or downwards like a thunderbolt. And in future games, some of Kirby's electrokinesis is cut. It is something introduced in the Kirby series, though it doesn't seem so versatile as previous entries, like fire, tornado, or ice, unless it's combined with other elements in Crystal Shards. And while it does protect Kirby, is nearly indestructible, and shocks nearby enemies, it doesn't cover large ground, nor is it as versatile. This was just the biggest downgrade compared to other moves I'd mentioned. Though I think that Spark Kirby could be the catalyst of other shockers to come.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
When it came down to picking a shocking contender from the Zelda series, there was only one reluctant choice. The amiibo from Ocarina of Time, the Barinade. Not entirely one of my favorite bosses, but it's still unique. First off, it's a dangerous murdering amiibo, just like any real parasite, capable of inflicting severe damage with its electric charges and having Lord Jabu Jabu green around the gills. The last boss in Link's childhood is nasty. You would need to use your boomerang constantly in order to attack its fatal body, and separate the small jellyfish which function as an indestructible shield around its abdomen. You always need to keep your distance and evade its volatile charges, as its massive thunder waves cause some fatal damage and temporary paralysis. This boss took me a while to get the gist, and it's no walk in the park for beginners. Credit to Fawful's minion for labeling it as one of his favorite bosses, but it's nearly easier said than done. You gotta have a red fairy handy for this fierce battle. Even Jabu Jabu's belly itself is no easy task navigating it, and dealing with many merciless and deadly enemies located throughout. Not to mention, it's the same place as one of the characters I absolutely despise and just reduce to fried frog legs. It does take a lot of skill and effort to endure the paralyzing, pulverizing parasite, and I always fantasized it wiping out so many Pokémon in my trainer's team, despite the large repertoire. Barinade may be an unfortunate experience, but it just proves how fatal a jellyfish or an amoeba, and even an electrokinetic, can be.
Fatality.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
It was just plain irresistible, both in size and distinctiveness, but the atomic core from Starfox was just too hard to miss. As the core computer of the flying saucer or the space station, it's known as the largest boss the original Starfox concocted. First off, it debuted in one of my all-time favorite levels, the Space Armada. Inside the flying saucer, you go through this aerial obstacle course, and then have an automatic sequence flying through a tricky corridor, and then meeting the boss. Unlike others, the atomic base gives you a little test preluding the battle. Next, it shoots out lasers that do hefty damage, and you need to shoot down its pylons while it in the room rotates. But it's not alone, as it summons small annoying probes that interfere, shoot lasers, and have a tendency to collide. After the 3 pylons are down, the core opens and unleashes lethal bombs until the core self-destructs, closing it. It may seem easy, but it returns in the difficult Sector Z in the space station. It pretty much has the same routine, but no cinematic maneuvers. And while it has the usual strategy, its pylons are shut off, rather than being decimated. If you aren't careful, the pylons would be turned on again, so keeping an eye on your shots is an absolute must. The main core opens and unleashes bombs again with more ferocity, and it self-destructs as it closes. But the base's comeback is trickier this time around. Fun fact, I was only 6 when this game came out. Whenever there was recess, I always fantasized myself evading its electricity, kind of like playing jump rope while leaping and ducking from the core's lethal lasers. It always consumed a lot of my energy as I was out of breath, but it was a nice exercise.
Want some exercise? Yes, exercise.
Much like Volcane on my previous elemental list, it only appeared in one game. The rumor had it was remade a few times throughout the series. Like the Ball satellite in 64 is based on it firing lasers while the switches are being destroyed. Or there'd be a sort of remake in Star Fox 2 and 0, but I never bothered with those two. Overall, next to the Fantrons, I'll consider the Atomic Core as my second favorite boss in the OG game. It's nostalgic, gives electricity a vital meaning as a core, it's unique, keeps you glued to your trajectory, and it gave my younger self some intense vibes. I wish it was highlighted more for Andross's biggest bad.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
Originally, I was gonna go for Spark Mandrill, though I wasn't too fond of the Maverick, nor its environment. It's more irritating with its rolling blackouts that are worse than in Donkey Kong Country. So I decided with the alternate decision of Web Spider. First off, the jungle looks lush and beautiful. Second, it's more lively than Spark Mandrill's stage in constant blackouts like in the Towers of Time. Third, it's a bit cringy using both phobias, including Mega Maverick hives. And finally, it's home of the interesting Maverick, despite its uninteresting name. Just like Dark Dizzy and Storm Eagle, it could summon mini-bots of its own kind. And much like Squitter in Donkey Kong Country 2, and those bugs in Pokémon, it makes unique use of its spider webs firing honing electric fields to stun X or Zero. But that's basically all it has, and some consider it good for beginners. Weird thing is, Grizzly Slash's upgrade for X is essential slicing through its electric silk. Yet Zero must have either Magma Dragoon or Split Mushrooms techniques. It's real weird and tricky. As pointed out by Idiot Noben in the distant past, this Maverick reminded him of an awesome Pokemon, Galvantula. That may be so considering they have electricity and are insectoids. And maybe Web Spider was inspiration. It's not a bad thing, but I believe that's how Galvantula came to be after 13 years. And it shares designs with Spinarak as well. I was glad I made a second choice with Web Spider. Its design and environment is amazing, it's said to be user-friendly, it's skilled as a Reploid and Maverick, and it's just a memorable choice as an Electrokinetic and as an Insectoid. May you die with honor, Spidey.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
The Were-Dragon kicks ass. If there's any Greek mythology game that can rival and maybe exceed Kid Icarus, this is surely one of them. And the Were-Dragon, since it's my all-time favorite beast, is essentially one of those reasons. There are two versions of this epic metamorphosis. Let's start from the beginning, the first game on the Sega Genesis. The sad truth is, this awesome animality debuts the second level. With 3 Spirit Balls gathered, the Centaurian or 2 can beef up and churn into the serpent as mighty as Liu Kang. They can fly all over the stage avoiding hazards and pitfalls. They can shoot out lightning bolts to hit distant enemies. But the best move is when they electrocute around them with many sparks that they're almost impenetrable. I always spammed the shtick out of the spark field on that ugly eye boss. Unfortunately, it's only available on the second level, and the Famicom begrudged us for more cooler beasts. We were actually robbed! Up until writing this script, I had no idea there was a 2005 version of Altered Beast, where the Were-Dragon is considered as the ultimate beast form. It actually has more advanced skills than its predecessor, such as throwing balls of lightning, and even charging up to make projectiles more stronger, and even refract into 3. Lightning Breath is the charged up version of the Lightning Bolt covering a bigger range, and Lightning Blast, which covers more vicinity and is more powerful than its original inner strength. That is a badass beast. According to the beast data, it's used as a microchip known as the Genome chip, and its high voltage is so powerful and wild that it's considered unstable and can damage sensitive equipment. So much so that it was moved to a power plant containment chamber. Damn! I think it was more based on the Japanese electric dragon than in Greek mythology. Maybe I'll try out the 2005 remake, and the Were-Dragon is still my most favorable beast that can be more capable than giving Hades or possessed Palutena electroshock therapy.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
Not including the iconic Ramuh on an Electromancer's list is like neglecting a city power for a month. And that's no exaggeration. The iconic elderly summon wielding the staff and possessing Judgment Bolt? It was a default choice for this list. He's the most ideal electrical summon in the entire Final Fantasy juggernaut. And, well, it took me a long time to warm up to Ixion in 10. Having it replace the vital Ramuh was just sucking out the positive energy. He's just as noticeable and symbolic as Ifrit and Shiva, and due to the unicorn replacing him, he never had a perfect record. The Judgment Bolt damages multiple foes and is just as volatile as Leviathan's Tidal Wave and Ifrit's Hellfire. And just like another famous contender on the list, he's well known for his sagaciousness, electric prowess, and wielding a rod for lightning. Just like his brethren, he made his debut in Final Fantasy III. He came from the Feymark in 4, and its summoning can take up only 30 magic points. And in the interlude from a yellow dragon, the false Rydia can attain and use its summon, much like Ifrit and Shiva. He too was brainwashed by the Maenads and provide as a boss, then summon in the after years. But it wasn't until 6 till he was relevant to the plot. In 6, he saved Terra's life after going berserk by exposure to an Eidolon during Kefka's assault on Narsh. He calmed her rage and nursed her back to health in the tallest building of Zozo. Then, once the returners reach it after a tumultuous journey, he gives them the scoop on how the War of the Magi came to be, Terra's birth and origin, and even how the Espers die and become magicite for the group to use. In 9, he gives Garnet a test to see if she's worthy on becoming a summoner by giving her lore trivia pre-established from other games before she uses him. In Dissidia, it's very interesting since he's summoned to lock out an opponent's own summon for a brief period, like disabling appliances with an EMP. I still and always will love Ramuh. He's the wise electrokinetic introduced to the Final Fantasy series. He's too iconic to be replaced. He can function sometimes as a caring and trivial character, and all his positive traits remind me of another famous electrokinetic later on.
My name's Yuna. Pleased to meet you.
For an entry in the Pokémon series, everyone and their mother always picks the mascot since the anime Pikachu. This was back in the late 90s when we're introduced to Ash, and the developers picked the underdog, the Electric Mouse. Meanwhile, gameplay-wise, other than in Smash, its defenses suck, its Gigantamax form looks and feels awful, even pointless, its base form isn't good in battle as Raichu, and there are rip-offs after rip-offs for each generation. The truth is Pikachu's been oversaturating every cool electric type, And after 25 long years, the Ash Saga came to an end.
Finally.
This was why I wanted to pick a different Pokemon for my first countdown. Honestly, people, since we've seen it millions of times, it's time to move on. Like I said, there are several electric types that deserve a chance to shine. So, which one made the cut? Originally, I was going to pick Zekrom as the second favorite, but I figured a mono-electric type can do just as great, and it's no freaking wonder why Logan prefers it as one of his all-time favorite electric types. Damn right! Considering Gen 3 only introduced 4 new electric types, including its pre-evolved form Electrike, and the rip-offs Plusle and Minun, it's without question that the Loyal Wolf stood out.
So, how many did we get?
4.
Only 4? I thought I'd get at least a dozen.
I wasn't thrilled with the hard restart of the series, Deadly Alliance included with Mortal Kombat, so when I saw Logan's top 100, I was impressed instantly. And while it has the usual advantages for most electric and fire types with its amazing speed and special attack, its defenses may be lacking, but it can make up for it in spades. It can learn moves from a few other elements, including fire, dark, the usual normal, psychic, and even sometimes control the weather and produce rainfall, making its voltage skills more effective. It could develop valuable shields for itself to make up its paper cup defenses with Light Screen, Protect, or its static ability paralyzing opponents on contact. It also has Lightning Rod, which absorbs all shocking moves, increasing its durability. Don't forget using the Cell Battery, which allows Manectric to draw in these attacks, increasing its prowess and strength at every surge. Ho! Can the rowdy rodent ever do that? Manectric is an absolute powerhouse with its plethora of pyro and electric skills, even when working in unison like they should. With all those skills at its disposal, it could deceive the most intimidating of foes. Maybe even the overrated Lucario or Pikachu, perhaps pseudo-legendaries as well. Like I said, I don't often care about a Pokemon's stats, but nevertheless, Manectric is balanced even when it comes down to its Mega Evolution. Its speed and special attack is enhanced while still maintaining its mono-electric type. Its defense is increased, but at least its stats aren't sporadic like Mewtwo or Golems. Throughout every generation, Manectric is always a competent and irresistible electric type and never gets dull like an old battery. And I just happen to adore dogs, in which it's based on the Raiju. Its concept is similar to the legendary Reiko, an electric being morphing into various mammals, in Manectric's case, a lightning wolf. And its mane can draw in and discharge electricity, which is something not many can do aside from Zekrom. You know, a long time ago when I was collaborating with a fanfic artist, we fantasized what if the Final Fantasy IV characters were trainers. And I had made up my own dream team with several favorites, including my own mascot. Hell, Manectric, including its Mega Evolution, was also involved in the war against the Red Dragons. Manectric's outstanding looks, concept, ability, stats, and as the best Gen 3 electric type just makes it all the more special. And it is definitely positive as my favorite electric type ever, thus being my second favorite Electromancer, and I highly recommend it to be a popular mascot. Eat that, Pikachu! Alright, we powered down 9 electrifying entries, but before we get to the shiniest, let's let the honorable and dishonorable mentions have a turn at the spotlight. I just have to stress this. I wasn't sure if I was going to include the last contender here, nor in second place. The final Electrokinetic isn't just the most iconic, but also very conflicting. He has experienced both the good and the bad for over 3 decades, and he has struck my heart the most recently. My utmost favorite lightning wielder is... It might have been obvious since Mortal Kombat's no stranger on taking the lead. It's no shocker that Raiden has become my all-time favorite Electrokinetic. Anything you can think of, he can do better. He can conjure and shoot out lightning and reach many ranges. He's versatile and well-balanced during combat. He can fly, levitate, teleport, work to different dimensions, and perform forceful air dives. And unlike any Electromancer, he's immune to chronokinesis. He can use a warhammer that can rival Thor's, wield his staff, as well as forge his twin blades with his own electricity. Man, Mortal Kombat has plenty of gifted elemental warriors that can go above and beyond. Whether by an amulet, or more preferably his own essence, he can master it all. Even like the Centaurian transforming to a dragon and cause major damage. He was able to endure the most lethal invaders of Earthrealm, that even surpassed him, such as Darkseid, Darkon, Shao Kahn, Shinnok, and with Lu's help, Kronika. He even switched ranks between a god, a former elder god, and even as a mortal. And he can also be sacrificial too, such as withholding his elder god status to become the eternal god of thunder, or creating an explosion as a failed attempt to destroy Onaga, or corrupting his essence to purify the Jinsei, or even reducing himself to a mere mortal. Raiden was actually inspired by lightning, one of the 3 storms from Big Trouble in Little China. He's the primary humble guardian of Earthrealm since its infancy, along with his valiant younger brother, Fujin, who has made it as one of my iconic Aerokinetics. His mission is to defend the peace from other realms, especially Outworld, and gather promising champions for the Mortal Kombat tournament. As a god, he can perform such astonishing feats, but his mortal self in the new era, I wasn't too impressed. He was the one who raised Liu Kang and Kung Lao since the classic timeline, making them his best disciples and bestowing Liu as the chosen one, and soon the keeper of time. I always see him as a father figure to them and the Shaolin. Sometimes he can be a bit cocky, like in the films or in the games, and there were sometimes he slipped up. Raiden was a clashing choice, like between the hot and cold fronts. I grew up knowing him since I was 5, but from there, he's been inconsistent. My relationship with Raiden didn't start off very well. If you would have seen my retrospective, you would know that. I wasn't too fond of him in the original game. I've always been an astrophobic ever since I was little, so he wasn't a good fit. And unlike the movie, the lore wasn't all that good.
Have a nice day.
And that's a nice day. Right back at you.
It wasn't until other pieces of media like the first 2 live-action movies, with the latter being so-so, and Defenders of the Realm. But as far as the games went, it was tough as handling that nefarious arcade cabinet where you hold the handlebars while being shocked. I wasn't into him in the classic era. His piss-poor decisions in MK9 and vs. DC just made him unbearable. Even in MKX and Deception, when he was consumed by rage and darkness, to spare nothing and no one on defending Earthrealm. So too, using Shinnok's amulet in 11, but that was Cassie's ineptitude. He even held back too much and was just too loyal in following the Elder God's asinine orders, as they only cared for their precious tournament rather than caring for their defenders. I never even bothered with MK11, as I lost all hope as Raiden wasn't like his benevolent self anymore. But that all began to change in 2021. Oh sure, he may have made some sketchy guidance with Liu Kang and Kung Lao and Shaolin monks, and let Shang facade as him until the last minute, but that was when my perception on him transformed. When I began my chronology series, I always wanted Raiden to be the proactive, protective combatant like a guardian of Earthrealm should be. He still had all his prowess excepting the dragon, as well as limitations like an Outworld. But he's been knowledgeable, compassionate, and dedicated to all his champions, even saving his disciples under tremendous adversities, even conquering his dark self like he did in MK11.
I have conquered the darkness within me. You must do the same.
You will have to kill me.
I would rather save you.
He too dealt with many overlords, including redeeming himself against his dark self and conquering Blaze with his most promising student, and literally saved all of existence from eternal ruin, just as he tried to do with the Saurians. And even though Raiden has always been a conflicting choice from all his endeavors in the Netherrealm games, including Aftermath, to his downgrade in Dominic's failed experiment, and becoming his corrupt self twice, it never seems to undo the past. Raiden has always been my prominent choice next to Fujin and Fire God Liu Kang. and I wish they'd bring him back as his sagacious self along with Lou in Injustice 3. It was just like any storm, despite the opaque sudden and wrathful build-up, and if you manage to endure it, there will often be a silver lining. I'm the Ekron Rider, and I changed my perception of him from undesirable and incompetent to virtuous and redeemable. And it was nearly worth it for all the valiant deeds he has done, despite the impulsive failures in between. He is more than a versatile and powerful Electromancer. He's a hero, guardian, and the realm's renowned legend.
Red Thunder is very cool. Did you ever hear of Red Thunder?